I'm Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty, June 12th, 2011. This week was made interesting by, if nothing else, the Bilderberg meeting in Switzerland, and Alex Jones spoke a lot about that this week, and we won't bore you with a whole lot of details that you probably are already aware of. I know Don has some things he'd like to say. One thing that I would like to mention is that, in case you didn't know it, it's considered treason because of the Logan Act for any U.S. officials to attend any kind of planning session with foreign officials that is not sanctioned by Congress. And clearly that's what the Bilderberg meeting entails. Not all the people there are U.S. officials that are currently serving, but there are definitely a few that attend, and in 2008, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama attended. And in case you didn't know or weren't aware, the punishment for treason is typically death. And we're not calling for these people to be put to death, but maybe they could be permanently...
We're just calling for enforcement of the law.
Yeah, well, if they were deported, we'd be happy, right?
Yeah, there actually is an arrest warrant out for Henry Kissinger, who of course has attended virtually all of the Bilderberg meetings every year. And Switzerland is a very interesting place for this meeting to be held. And I've heard reporters on InfoWars, etc., say this is the wrong place, the wrong time, or the right place, the right time from a liberty movement. The Swiss people have a tradition of individual liberty. In fact, Switzerland is one of the nations upon which our republic, the United States Republic, was founded. And their principle is that local representation creates the federal government. The federal government is responsible to the local states, which is a different terminology there, but it's the same principle. So you had in Switzerland these elected officials, members of parliament, who had opposed the Bilderbergers coming to their nation, and after they had already come, they opposed them having secret meetings there and opposed them blocking the press. You had We Are Change, Luke Rudkowski, and We Are Change Switzerland there filming the event from the outside of hotel, of course, and being bullied and various use of underhanded tactics to keep them away. But these members of parliament in Switzerland wrote a letter on behalf of We Are Change, which Luke Rudkowski presented to the police, elected public servants in Switzerland, to demand entrance of these, the demand that We Are Change be treated respectfully as journalists and be allowed to cover the event, and demanded that they be allowed entrance, the parliament members be allowed entrance into the meetings. And that something has already happened along those lines. I haven't seen what it is, so I'm not up on the very latest, but these are very encouraging developments. Not the least of which is, even though there's been a virtual media blackout in the United States, there was, Judge Napaldo mentioned it a little bit on his show and on Fox News, there has been greater global awareness than ever, with Alex Jones calling for a protest there on site, and that on top of the local developments of the Swiss people themselves just saying no to these people, that this is not how democracy works, and we don't want this in our nation. So very, very encouraging. Things are moving forward. In fact, I'm really thinking it's almost like the battle against the Bilderbergers one in one. You have the mainstream media putting up this facade saying these are not important, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Meanwhile, the public, who is increasingly awake because of the internet, sees what's going on and is demanding accountability and change so that the people take back their governments. These guys are being exposed, and this is very, very good news. So we need to be beginning to plan towards solutions. And I know there's a lot of Ron Paul supporters that are big in pushing for the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States to regain their authority within the United States and shut down this police state. But the movement is broader than that. Not all of us agree on everything Ron Paul stands for. Myself, not economically. I'm not a pro-Austrian school. There are lots of solutions out there, and we the people need to begin to come together for solutions for taking our country back. We need to be able to think past this divide and conquer, left versus right. We need to say, how can we regain our republic and begin to function under the principles of liberty that really founded our nation? It's time to really start getting aggressive and seeking solutions.
Well, that's fabulous. It sounds great. I hope you're right. One small concern I have regarding the Bilderberg meeting becoming public is I wonder if now they'll just go deeper underground and maybe do online conferencing or something along those lines that nobody would even be aware of taking place.
Yeah, there's no doubt that these guys are not going to give up control easily. They're going to feign, they play possum, they're going to pretend like they don't have power. They still have power. And the basis of their power is the fraudulent global money system. So that's why we need to get the word out there, get everybody to understand what's going on. Once the people begin to understand what these bankster, mafia-like creatures' game is, then the people can begin to take control. And again, I'll plug Bill Still's The Secret of Oz and the Money Masters. They're great learning tools to find out. Historically, this is not a new thing. This is an old pattern. And whenever you have private people getting a money monopoly, creation of the money supply, it's bad news. And then what could happen if we don't wake up is you'll have people that say, fiat money bad, we have to have real gold standard. Guess what? Meanwhile, who has been hoarding the gold? Who is going to have control of the economy if we say we want a broad-based commodity standard even? These people have been using their private fiat money system to buy up all of the real commodity-based assets. So they plan on these pendulum swings. They plan on people saying we got to get away from fiat money. Newsflash: fiat money is the people's money. If huge if it is managed by the people in an open system. This has been true throughout history. I'm reading Bill Still's No More National Debt. It gives an excellent historical overview of this stuff. Commodity-based money is a trap because it's going to be privately controlled. Private people will own the commodity. Whenever you have private people owning something, then the public becomes debtors to the private because the financing becomes private. That may sound libertarian. That may sound like you have to have the freedom to own stuff, but the real value that people have is what they can create together in a community, and that is what the money value is based on. It's not if the amount of gold or whatever that a nation owned was an indicator of its wealth, its power, its the extent of freedom and overall health of a society, that we would not see things the way they are, because you don't have nations that have had the most gold have not been healthy societies. So real wealth is not about the amount of commodities that you can amass. It's about the use of currency publicly owned in the public good. And people that are say so anti-collectivistic, that they don't imagine that there can be such a thing as a valueless currency in the public good are going to, or we have the danger of that kind of thinking leading us down the road to enslavement. So there are serious things to discuss here so that we don't go down the wrong road. There is a fork in the road approaching, and we all need to get educated about it.
Great. And Bill Still's video, as Don said, is a great way to become educated. Don helps me become educated by presenting things like that. So I hope you'll take his advice and learn about some of those things. Hopefully we are coming to a point where we will need to step in and take back our government and take over once more. Another person who we know who is making a huge effort to do that is Heather Goss, working locally with the East Bay Tea Party, and by Bay, that's the San Francisco Bay Area, to push back against Agenda 21, which is a directive of the United Nations, but which is also has come to be known as Communities for Sustainability. That's a nice little polite word that makes it appealing to all of us. Heather is very effective in going to meetings, communicating, and she was gracious enough to do an interview this week with me, and everything she said is great. It's on Pearls of Liberty website. I put the videos up. There are a couple more that I'm editing that will be out soon as well, but the one that I strongly recommend you watch is the one about the Delphi Technique, which is the method that is actually established for bringing communities into these plans against the better judgment and the will of definitely, the majority who know about it. And if more people were aware of it, the huge majority. So if you have a few minutes, look up Heather's Delphi Technique video. And Don, do you have anything to say about Heather?
Yeah, this is great. The thing that she exposes is how they create a fake consensus. So these controllers are all about how to manipulate the people so that it looks like it's something grassroots. And Agenda 21 is a masterful attempt at this, but it's very, very vulnerable, because if people raise objections and are wise to their techniques of management, the Delphi technique, it'll fall like a house of cards. And now is really the time to get in there, get knowledgeable about this, and find out about what's happening in your community. Local Tea Party meeting was great because they actually brought in a lifelong Democrat who is extremely knowledgeable about Agenda 21. The whole thing about Agenda 21 is it's, like I said, fake consensus, and it's based on this idea that you sell out your, well, of course I'm putting it in my terms, but what they say is that the community has a higher value than the individual. And that might sound like it contradicts what I just said, but it doesn't, in terms of what I was talking about, the monetary system. In order for them to get their agenda through, they need to create the illusion of a consensus, and they use these techniques to do that. So it's extremely important for the left and the right, this false divide and conquer thing, to come together, to unify as a real understanding, real grassroots. Doesn't need a majority. You just have to cut through this illusion of consensus and raise objections, become knowledgeable, and say, wait a minute, our nation was founded on the principles of individual liberty, and for the good of the planet, yes, we need to make wise decisions, but we don't need to come into a really Nazi-like understanding of how we have to march in lockstep and do things as if we were some Borg that is marching lockstep. And the phrase that occurs to me is, it takes a community to build Nazis. And that's really what all this is about. This is the green mask. This is the disguise. And like I've said, maybe here before and other times, I became aware of this whole green agenda by reading a book by Larry Abrahams in the late 1980s called The Greening. And what he exposed was that with the fall of the Soviet Union, all of the communist leaders infiltrated the environmental groups and began to move forward this new agenda, this green agenda, and the green movement, the ecology movement, the environmental movement, is really just a green mask for this new communist agenda, where the individual becomes subservient to the state. And there's lots of propaganda techniques in there to make you feel like it's good, but that's why it's so important to dig down and find out what's really going on, because this is a sellout big time. We encourage you to look into Agenda 21, and please watch that video of Heather, because she's an expert on it.
Yeah, she truly is. She's a gem, and we both feel really glad to have found her. And if we are all able to rally together as Democrats and Republicans to take back our freedom, do you know of anybody who might be able to lead us as a country, as our president?
Thank you for that softball. Yeah, we're Ron Paul fans, and like I said, I don't agree with everything Ron Paul says, but he is absolutely doing everything that he does based on his understanding of the Constitution, which is, as far as I can tell, beats everybody else hands down. Now, Gary Johnson's not bad, former governor of New Mexico. Some real strong libertarian principles there. And I also want to say that I'm not automatically for anybody who says they're a libertarian, because one of the things I learned from this Democrat speaker at the Tea Party was that the Libertarian Party in the United States was founded by global communitarians that want to give up the individual liberties of Americans for the good of the liberty of the whole planet. So you really, really have to understand what somebody's hidden agenda is, and it's not always what they seem. So I don't trust libertarians, but I do trust Ron Paul. I do think that he has an incorrect economic understanding, but I think we can't get too far ahead of the game. We want to push the liberty agenda, and nobody is doing that better than Ron Paul. So one of the really exciting things that happened this week, this was hugely encouraging for me to see that Ron Paul was very warmly received by the Faith and Freedom Conference that was held this past week. And there were others in attendance there that wanted to get the Christian vote. And people like Mormon Mitt Romney and Michelle Bachmann and others were there. But apparently Ron Paul received the warmest response to his deep explanation based on Scripture of the whole the whole mindset of America is originally no king but Jesus. And the whole principle of, he went through in 1 Samuel, I believe it is chapter 8, where Samuel talks to the Israelites and said, you will realize what a wicked thing you did when you asked for a king. He talked about how important individual liberty is to God, and how there's something in the human heart that wants to sell out to that, and that we as a nation would be betraying ourselves if we do that. Now, these are things that I've talked about here before, and this is the scripture that I've just leapt off the page to me about what God wants in terms of liberty for each individual human. It's not about imposing a Christian agenda. And the encouraging thing to me was not only was Ron Paul very warmly received with that treatment of that long passage of Scripture, the various Christian leaders there recognized that we are at the point as a nation where Christians are spinning their wheels if they're fighting about abortion and prayer in schools. We're seeing that if we focus on those issues, important though they are, we're going to lose the bigger war, which is individual liberty. And Ron Paul is so correct when he says that the principle of individual liberty underlies religious freedom. You really can't have religious freedom unless you have individual liberty. Thus his stand for not opposing the mosque built near Ground Zero, because if we say that we can't allow Muslims to build there, what are we really saying to the Christian churches? We're saying there is a separation. We're saying we're endorsing or non-endorsing one religion and favoring one over the other, etc. We can't do that. We have to be neutral as a nation. So we would really be shooting ourselves in the foot if we took a stand against the rights of Muslims in America, thinking that we were doing a good thing. Really, America needs to be about liberty for all, liberty and justice for all.
Absolutely. One of the words that is in my mind a lot about alliances with people and who do I really agree with, I'm less and less feeling a need to agree about theology or philosophy in many respects. I see a great factor in finding things in common with people on a very foundational level, based on whether people want to be self-determined, whether they want their life to be self-determined. And if we have liberty, what do we do with it? We determine our own lives. We determine how we want to live. We determine what kind of level we want to be at economically, how hard we want to work. You don't have to be wealthy to be happy, but if a certain level of poverty is enforced upon you, then you probably won't be very happy, because your freedom is gone, your liberty, your ability to self-determine is gone. So again, I see self-determination as critical, and Ron Paul actually in a speech helped me to understand that liberty is really foundational in a lifestyle, because without liberty we are not permitted to have our lives be self-determined, and without self-determination we can't practice any philosophy or faith that we hold dear. We're forced to practice that which is forced upon us by the state.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just that God is all about individual freedom, and he did not force Israel to choose him. He said, you're wise if you do, and these will be the consequences if you don't. And he let people make their own decisions. And for that reason, I can't see any Christians trying to force a Christian agenda. Sure, we want to be in communities that have the same values, but that kind of thing can happen at the local level, state or local, where you have laws and ordinances that support your lifestyle. But even there, I think, how are you going to help someone to realize that it's Christ that sets you free if you have the government trying to do the enforcement of that? Because what really needs to happen is that individual hearts need to be changed so that the law is within sight of you. That's the new covenant. And if Christians come off as trying to impose external rules in a covenant, everybody gets the wrong idea about what the gospel is. It's not external rules. It's an internal work of the heart that God does. So I think Christians should be all about individual liberty.
And for our medical update this week, Dr. Noah was good enough to share with us about statin drugs. the dangers of statin drugs that are often prescribed for cholesterol. So here's our segment with Dr. Noah.
Dr. Noah?
Well, thanks, Don. It's another Saturday it must be.
Hello.
I'm together with my favorite friends and colleagues here. So it's been a good week again. Lots of people being helped in my practice. But as I was just talking a little bit off camera here, is that just on one of the search engines, the top story is that about statin drugs. Statin drugs have been used for about over 50 years. They're supposed to be these life-saving type of drugs because one of the factors of heart disease is cholesterol, and we'll talk a little bit about that. That's true, but nice little depiction. And there's actually 14 other factors. So that'd be like having one of 14 things that you're concerned about, and you forget about the other 13.
Wow.
So
And they're all knives going into your heart.
yeah, they're all causing other types of factors that have a part to play in heart disease. It's not just statin problems.
Mm-hmm.
And go a little bit about that. Yeah, they found out long about 50, 60 years ago that cholesterol was a factor in terms of heart disease, and so there was a big emphasis on different like eggs and butter, and that sort of started to kind of thinking that developed this plaque formation in the blood vessels. Well, about 10 years ago, only from Harvard, they discovered that it's not so much the plaque, it's what happens to the plaque. It kind of like popcorn, if it bursts, then you have heart attack.
Yep.
And so if you're able to reduce, and we've talked about oxidative stress, or causing oxidizing of the plaque, that's what makes it more prone to have these kind of popcorn effects like that.
Wow.
So it's not the old notion is that your blood vessels start to thicken with this junk in there and close it off, because actually that can happen, but the body's being a lot smarter, develops what's called collateralization. So as that starts to close off, your body in its innate wisdom makes little blood vessels around it, and so the circulation continues. So that's not always the case, but it's another little game that they'd like to play. It's called an angiogram. They throw up this, they show, oh, Don, you got this blockage here, and you need to have, heart surgery, $300,000, or we're going to save your life. Well, way back about 25 years ago, they did lots of studies, and they showed that, okay, that works for about 30 to 40%, but the other 70 or 60%,
Wow.
it's just basically a joke because of this collateralization.
Wow.
So the picture tells you there's a blockage, but the picture's not good enough to see the circulation. So there's another test called an ejection fraction, which is how much blood is actually getting into the heart. That's more important about seeing this blockage here because of the detours that occur like that.
Right. Well,
So-
like you said, the doctor that I went to is pretty much in agreement. He talked about it being these events that are it's not just the lining of the walls.
That's right.
It's these bursting events. He
That's right.
called it sort of something that would obstruct.
Exactly.
And
So when this
not
explosion
gradually,
yeah,
but
exactly.
explosively.
There's explosion, then you would have a cardiac event. And it's kind of interesting you use these words because that's what people say, well, how do you feel? I'm not feeling about it. This is what the science says. I mean, just like your doctor, he just wasn't just talking off the top of his head. He was like me back then, understood that this was the science. Now, unfortunately, most people go and they go to their drug doctor, and the drug doctor just spouts out what the drug reps tell them to,
Right.
which is actually not science anymore. I mean, that's an old type of thinking. It doesn't apply. And as we'll talk about here in a couple minutes. So now the FDA has come out and saying, okay, statin drugs do cause this problem where their muscles waste away, they become totally incapacitated, completely disabled, and they can die. I mean, that's a good deal.
Well, your heart's a muscle too.
That's exactly right. And so that becomes a factor.
It's horrible.
So,
I
yeah.
mean, I have seen this happening to my own father, who has been on statin drugs for a long time, and he is skin and bones. It is
Right.
so
It's
sad.
tragic.
It is so sad.
And he's
But
he's been a very
Yeah,
vigorous man, tennis player,
he's spent
swimmer.
a lot of time and
Totally
energy
does.
taking care of himself
There's actually
and doing what they tell him to do.
it's a website. This is actually a drug doctor. He was actually a flight surgeon for the astronauts, and so this is a pretty top guy here. It's called spacedoc.net. So check that out. So he goes into it because he had this problem, and also he goes into is a common problem with statin drugs, which is very, very rarely, is actually amnesia. Your brain shuts off and you can't even know who you are.
Whoa.
And he goes through the example where he was taking this drug and he thought he was like 12 years old. I mean, causing all this kind of psychosis and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if some things that are perceived as Alzheimer's are
Exactly right.
actually...
Well, that's what he goes into, and we'll talk about Alzheimer's. I mean, a lot of times and we've actually had on my TV show, Dr. Long, who's a medical doctor, and Cindy and Don both know him, and Gary's here in the background too. He knows him too. Is that he has seen that himself, that B12 deficiency has the same type of symptoms, and there are studies out there that 10 to 20% of quote Alzheimer's is not Alzheimer's; it's a B12 deficiency.
Wow.
Oh my.
So we're talking millions of people needlessly wasting their mind, causing the average cost of Alzheimer's about $90,000 to $100,000, and that doesn't include the supervised care, which is $10,000 a month. These people have to be supervised because they don't know who they are, they don't know how to take care of themselves. You hear, in TV reports, where people walk off and they don't know where they are because their mind is totally gone. And 10 to 20% of those people could be correct like that. And now you can go to my website, and I've actually had a patient that had Alzheimer's full blown, and 6 or 7 months, she got cured. Oh, how'd that happen?
So do you think that was a correct diagnosis of Alzheimer's?
No, it wasn't correct.
Yeah,
But even with the correct diagnosis, this plaquing, or now the thinking is it's actually what's called protein aggregation, is that these protein structures actually unfold differently. It's kind of a little bizarre. It's what's called mad cow syndrome. The disease isn't due to a bug, but for some reason the actual structure of proteins change. And in chemistry, and Don being that, structure equals function. As you change the structure, the function changes. As you change these proteins, now the brain, so the structure is working, you change the structure or aggregate or fold this incorrectly, and now it dysfunctions.
Yeah, a huge part of the whole function of the body is based on the structure of proteins, as you well know. So you change that, oh man, you're mixing
And that's what Protandem does by communicating through these different pathways, through these NERV2 and kinase and KEEF type of pathways. It's actually creating the proper structures of these proteins.
And of course, the electromagnetic field that the body is subjected to have also
a big
huge
impact
effect on that.
Exactly, exactly. But no, that's another time. So this was a study that was done about a year or so ago. Looked at all the scientific research, 11 of the randomized control studies of statins like that. The placebo group, now you have to pay a little attention here. That shows you why we should spend $40 billion a year, on these statin drugs like that. So this is from their own drug companies. This is from the University of Cambridge, pretty big prestigious place like that. Looked at all the science, once again, not just with the BS that the drug companies are telling like that. Death rate of placebo. Placebo, once again, is a fake pill. It's not supposed to have any impact on what's going on like that. The death rate of placebo group, once again, from all the studies they were able to cover like that, was 4.44%. Okay. So, okay?
Yeah.
So
very low.
Very low to begin with. So even if you didn't do anything, only about 4%, but 4% is still a lot of people. Statin drugs, 4.13. 0.3% difference. That's what's worth billions of... People think because statistically, so people think and they hear all this BS, oh yeah, this is a lifesaver, this is saving trillions of people. Oh, that's right, there's only billions of people on Earth, but...
So, this is breaking news right now that this study has just come out, am I right?
No, this came out in June 2010.
Oh, okay.
This is an old
study. But you're talking about something that came out even more recently?
No, the more recent one was about destroying the muscles. That's what they wanted me to talk about statin drugs.
Which you had told us anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's been known for about 30 years.
Yeah.
This is once again just a review of studies that have been going on since in 2007. So as we keep going further back, this type is starting to reveal about this fraud that's been going on for statin drugs.
Wow.
One is that drug doctors, especially cardiologists, are giving this crap to people, and it does it once again, 0.44% if you did nothing. And this is the meaning about eating well and exercising, that we know from Dr. Dean Ornish. Oh, that's right, he's a drug doctor. He's only a professor at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. He showed just by diet, meditation, vegetarian diet, he was able to reverse heart disease. So actually, you got better. And he actually compared his program, if you went to his program, was about $3,000 versus about $50,000, which is the typical.
Oh my.
Once again, it's a scam. So anyway, it just shows you, once again, 0.44% if you did nothing. You ate your Big Macs, you watch Oprah every day, you sit on your butt, you're out of shape. That's the death rate in terms of heart disease versus the magic of a $40 billion industry of just the drugs themselves. That doesn't include going to the cardiologist who is worthless and going on once again 4.13. So 4.44 versus 4.13. Not, like I talk about studies showing, this is like protandim is 1,800% more effective than if you did it individually, or hundreds of percent better
great.
type of thing. Yeah, it's 0.3%.
And you're incurring the risk.
Well,
You're incurring the great risk of having your
Right.
muscle tissue break
Right.
down, and it collects in your kidneys, isn't that right? When the muscle
we'll
tissue.
talk about some of
Okay.
the other things that it does.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Those are all good things. So some of the other benefits from some of the studies here. Let's see here. Well, this is another study that was done back in 1991, Journal of American Medical Association. So the issues surrounding lower lipids were discussed under coronary artery disease and so like that. So they looked at executives, and they went for 10 years. Through 10 years of follow-up, however, the mortality in the aggressively treated group was 45% higher in cardiac mortality, which is death, and 140%, and cardiac death was 140% versus the controls. So this, because it actually, once again, it is toxic to your kidneys, so you die of other things. So you don't die of heart disease, but they still kill you by 140%.
My.
So it goes back to, what do you rather be, shot or stabbed to death? You're still dead. But once again, they want to play games. Oh, well, Cindy, good, our cholesterol came from 275 down to 200. They don't tell you about, once again, okay, that has a factor to play, a little bit of a part to play.
And a big part of that is that just by getting people to buy into this thing that we've got this latest and greatest, they're not going to take responsibility for their own health.
That's right. Well, we'll talk about the muscle damage here. And it says this. So here's only an MD, PhD from Wake Forest University. Oh, that's right. That's not a health food store. That's a university. The risk of muscle injury with statins has not received adequate regulatory attention in the past. Yeah, because they just blow that away. Hey, you're interfering with me making $40 billion a year. As I see it, is a general statin problem. Because they were just looking at Lipitor and Zocor, which is two. Yeah, all statin drugs do this. So that's the kind of joke. Now this is the kind of interesting. This is all about money. When Lipton goes off patent, and that's the big scare of this company, in a few months, in 2 more months, their patent goes away. So they can't charge $300 or $400 a month. But one, it's worthless and hurts people like that. Now it's going to go down to about $30. So they're going to go boo hoo hoo. Well, they should be thrown in jail.
They'll just put more people on it.
Well, whatever.
Hello.
In a few months, then even the advantage will disappear. It would be very difficult for me, and this is the MD, PhD, to understand why this statin drugs would be prescribed under any scenario. So even though it's under patent, it's okay to do it. But once it gets off the patent, then you can't figure out why it would be beneficial.
Is this just one statin drug that's going off patent, or
no, Lipitor, which is one, which is the
how many
original
are
one.
there?
I think there's about 12 of them out there,
Okay.
and they all once again supposed to be super duper, and then of course they're not super duper.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
The drug companies will just transition to another one, probably.
Yeah, right.
Sure, so if you've been on Lipitor, your doctor will
Well,
recommend one that's
and
still...
Don has a background in chemistry. All they do is they put probably another methyl group or hydroxyl group on there, tweak a little bit. Now it's unique. They patent it, and now they can once again charge because of the patent, and they're protected for for their patent type time.
Right.
So here's a study from the Journal of American Medical Association. Common cholesterol drug lowers cholesterol, but not death rate. That's what people have to start understanding here. I mean, we talk about that in cancer. Tumor side once again decreases by 50%, but the person still dies. So these are all just like parlor games. This is like magic tricks, smoke and mirrors. Things happen, but you're still dead. So who cares about this stuff? And spend $50,000. So yeah, spend $300 a year. Your cholesterol come down, but you still die the same day if you didn't do anything.
Wow.
And once again, we're not even going into, like we talked earlier, there are other natural things that lower your cholesterol and other things you can do that make you healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like exercise, eating right, sensible things, drink good water.
Or even different detoxification things to get the cholesterol
That's
out
exactly
of your body.
right.
There are ways to do that.
Well, 80% of all your cholesterol, irregardless of is made from your body, from your liver.
But the body also uses cholesterol to seal off things that are
Not only
that are
seals
harmful
off,
to
it's a
yourself.
major factor chemically for all your hormones. And last time I looked, if you don't have your hormones, you die.
Yeah, there's a doctor
Oops.
that I think
Yeah.
it's Dr. Douglas, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
Dr. Douglas,
That he says if your cholesterol is lower than 200, he's going to be very concerned for you.
Well, there's
Something
studies
like
that show that if you go below 150, your mortality rate actually goes up for other factors again.
Oh my.
So once again, whether you rather be shot, stabbed, or run over by a tractor trailer, you're still dead. I mean, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, your body uses cholesterol to replenish the cells in the brain.
It's part of your brain, exactly. That makes most of the fat up in your brain, so you're able to articulate.
And if,
that's
if you
right,
don't have that, you think you're 12 years old. Is that what you said?
Well, that's what I mean. Well, I was going to say. Well, I was going to talk that's why you kind of talk about. Yeah, maybe this is all about mind control.
Yeah.
Take these drugs that make your brain not work,
Yeah.
and then you just nod your head, going, "Oh, I believe that. Oh,
Yeah.
I believe that.
No.
The sky is purple. Oh, I believe that."
Thank you, Mr. Doctor in the white
Yes,
coat, for making me
exactly.
feel better.
I should vote for this person because they smile and they're funny, and yeah, I should vote for them. So that goes into a whole different type of arena like that. Here's another study, only published in Neurology, another drug journal, and that's what blows me away. Oh, why? I go see my drug doctor, and he or she's too busy doing what? Mental masturbation
Golf.
all the time? Yeah,
Golf.
golf or something
You're
like this is
forgetting.
in their publications.
Wow. They
Four-
don't read. Clearly, they
Yeah.
don't keep up.
Cholesterol drugs increase risk of nerve damage between 400 and 1400%.
They have to tell you what they're doing to you.
Well, they don't want to tell you because then you're afraid you're not going to take the drug that's worthless. They're not going to get their money in terms
Well,
of.
what I mean is the controllers at the very top have to let this information out at some level so that they can tell the people being sacrificed
Right,
to
that's
the
right,
system
that's right.
what's going on
That's
with
right,
them.
that's true.
It's like saying, oh, we told you that, but you just didn't pay attention.
Zocor, another type of statin drug, raises insulin. Insulin is a independent risk factor for aging, heart disease. You don't want high insulin levels. We know diabetes has, once again, all these serious consequences. Once again, these drugs raise that. And it says, cholesterol-lowering drugs reduce levels of 3 important antioxidants, vitamin E, beta-carotene, and CoQ10. Now, CoQ10 by itself,
That's huge.
yeah, that's huge. That is a necessary type of compound. Without CoQ10, you will die. That's a risk factor.
That when my doctor wanted me to go on statin drugs for my high cholesterol,
Oh,
and
he
they
must have
said, oh,
loved
now
you.
you have to take, they were going to use natural statin drugs, and they said, now make sure you take this
Extra
extra CoQ10, because the statin will deplete your CoQ10 in your body. Well, isn't that a clue right there? What's
Right.
going on?
Cholesterol drugs, now this was published in Natural Medicine, which is not a drug journal, but once again, it's a peer-reviewed journal. Cholesterol drugs increase cancer risk. Oh, that's a good deal. So once again, as we've talked many, many times, this is the only industry that can create problems and they laugh all the way to the bank. So they give you some crap like this.
Not true, the government does that.
Well, that's true, but that's right. I stand corrected. There's two entities, the medical and drug industry and the government. I stand corrected like that. And the same type of thing, don't have any critical thinking with the government and what you do. That's right. Those people work for us. We're the active parts, but no. They're the government officials. They tell us what to do, which is completely
Flipped around,
flipped
backwards.
around. Exactly right. And same with the medical profession. I got the white coat on. I tell you all this BS, and you're supposed to walk and talk and be happy about that. So anyway,
And we call this progress.
well, that's what we tell it that we're a civilized, advanced civilization. In fact, we're actually not. We're once again manipulated little dolls that go around in a little puppeteer.
Losing
type
our
of thing.
freedom.
Yep.
No.
Let's see. So here's an American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Diet can lower bad cholesterol like statin drugs. Once again, this is just over and over again. Diet matches statin drugs. And so I'm not trying to tell you things that, aren't, cholesterol has a factor to play. But, you don't have to take this crap that one doesn't work and has lots of harm and costs us lots of money that we don't have. So that's kind of sad. The ultimate drug for heart disease is physical exertion, exercise. Gary's a big proponent. He's off camera. He knows about exercise. We all do. And emotional stress. These are all factors that have a part to play. Yeah. Here's a statistic which I haven't updated. In 1994, now these numbers are. An angiogram was about $5,000. So they're a lot of money. That was about $10 billion. Coronary bypass surgery, $44,000. Angioplasty, $21,000. And heart transplants, $500,000. That was in 1994. So, almost going on 20 years. So those prices have gone up at least 10% per year. So I'll do the math next time. And once again, those are hundreds of thousands of dollars now. That one shouldn't be done. Two, are totally been worthless. Like angioplasty. Angiograms that they've been shown that once again shows you a blockage but doesn't really tell you the full picture like that. Plus it has its own risk factor. 5 to 10% of the people have complications. 2 or 3% of those people die of just having the procedure done. Angioplasty, that's been shown to only once again be effective for a couple months at most. By 6 months, 40% of the restenosis or trying to open those have collapsed again.
Like 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, that's okay. That means every 6 months you make $100,000. I mean, I like that.
Just your oil change.
That's right. We talk about the person who's my front desk person. She got screwed up by the medical profession, and every 8 weeks she has to go in for a $50,000 restenosis. She has to open up for the rest of her life.
Wow.
I mean.
What a great tragedy.
What a great tragedy. I mean, the doctor's happy. He's got his Mercedes payment and his village in Switzerland, and this poor young woman will just eventually have a complication. It's just a matter of time. The more you do a procedure, eventually they will screw up.
Well, the pain and suffering, as we always talk about,
it's unbearable.
Financial costs.
The
pain and suffering there's no way to attach a price tag.
Well, it's crazy.
They're ruining people's lives. Like these doctors who are prescribing the statin drugs that break down the muscle tissue.
Yeah.
People can't continue
So
to be vigorous and exercise
that's
and
it.
do the other
Here's
things.
a destroyed individual. Plus now society now has to pay because now they're on welfare. They're on some type of disability that we have to pay that they created. So that'd be like your car mechanic screwing up your car, and then we're going to all have to chip in and buy Gary a new car because the car mechanic. No, the car mechanic would be thrown in jail, and then that person would then have to defend for themselves.
But what we're doing is we're privatizing the profit,
Yep.
and we're socializing the loss.
Exactly, which is the best combination.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No civilization's ever been able to survive that. Oh, and that's right. We're not going to be able to survive it either. So that's kind of a nice little story. But that's all part of it. The bigger story that Don and Cindy talk about, this is all once again a kind of a system to once again create changes so that certain people are able to control society.
Wake up! Wake up!
Wake up!
We're all little roosters
Oh,
crowing
no.
at you.
It's
Wake
your
up!
health.
No,
Wake up.
Don't give it away.
I'm going to take my drugs and be stupid. I don't know. Where's my TV? My hat's on backwards. My pants are falling off. Everything is okay. That's what we want.
So you can talk real cool.
Exactly. Because that's an addiction too. Just
Oh, boy.
listen like that. So that's what I had to talk about this
Great.
week.
Thank
Nothing
you
too
so
serious.
much.
It's your life. That's all. Your health and well-being.
Thank you
So
very
thanks
much.
again for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. See you next
Listen
time.
to this man. And thank you, Dr. Noah, for that. That's something that we all have concerns about, cholesterol, and the way that's typically prescribed is definitely not the best way to go about fighting cholesterol. And now we move into our Pearl Culture segment of the show. And there were a couple of films this week that I watched and Don didn't. You could say they were chick flicks. A Month by the Lake is a film with Vanessa Redgrave. It's a British film, very quiet, very peaceful, and the film is set just before the beginning of World War II, the summer before World War II began. And that's why it's a little interesting from a Liberty perspective. It just seems like every time there's a major war, the world loses a certain added degree of innocence, and this was a time of relative innocence before that horrible war began. So I enjoyed it for that reason. And another film that I saw without Dawn this week is called The Golden Bowl. And it's an interesting film. Kind of shows a couple of wealthy people who are more what would be called nouveau riche from the United States. A man who made his fortune, I believe, in the mining industry. And then one of the characters is from a royal Italian family. He's a prince, and it shows a little bit of the degeneration of royalty, but at the same time, happy ending film. And the next film that we would like to discuss in Pearl Culture is a film called Carriers. It was kind of almost a zombie movie, not quite a zombie movie, but kind of had that feeling. And it's not unlike many zombie films that we enjoy, like Zombieland, a few others, Shaun of the Dead. It's not a comedy. It's not meant to be a comedy. It's an end of the world kind of a plague film, and the film is really about the relationships between the people and how much they value others, how much they value one another. And if you don't mind seeing a little bit of blood and gore, it's a good relationship film, I think. What's your reaction to it?
Yeah, I think it's worth watching. It's kind of like, to put it a little bit in context, it's kind of like Outbreak that wasn't contained. If you're familiar with the movie Outbreak and Dustin Hoffman, that where there's a disease and it's past containment. What happens is that some people become carriers and some people get the illness, and you can be very circumspect about scrubbing everything and hope to not get the illness. And so what you see is people's values shift as to whether they value their relationships, as Cindy said, or whether their ultimate value is just simply staying alive at any cost. So it is a movie that makes you think about such things and what it means to be human in a catastrophic type situation.
And of course, there are many films that give you that opportunity. Another film that we saw recently, which I thought was quite good, very entertaining, great actors, was the film Impostor. Did you enjoy that as much as I did? With Gary Sinise and...
Yeah, that was the movie that was the sci-fi movie based on a book by short story by Philip K. Dick. And I love the genre. I love the whole idea of libertarian science fiction, the Prometheus Awards, and all of that. And this was a film in that genre that causes you to think about what a future society would be like, and with different scenarios unfolding. In this particular scenario, there is the idea of replicating humans, and in the film you don't know whether the people you're watching are the good guys or the bad guys, and whether there's the scientist that's developed this new technology that will defeat the aliens has been replaced or not. So I won't give it away. I did enjoy it. I didn't think it was great, but I did think it's worth watching.
Yeah, it was fun, entertaining science fiction, and I think in 2 weeks I'll remember it. A lot of films, in 2 weeks somebody mentions the film and you say, what? I never saw that, but I think I will remember Impostor. A very entertaining, just fun film that we saw has the interesting name of Killers. It is about killers, but that's kind of a heavy name for what the film is actually about, I thought.
I think it's kind of a cross between Fun with Dick and Jane and Meet the Parents, if you can imagine such a thing, because you've got this man that marries somebody, and he's not only a spy but a contract killer, and he has to tell her that he can't tell her what he does, but he does work for the blah blah blah, and he has a license to blah. So there's a lot of great lines in the film like that. That character is played by Ashton Kutcher, and it's great. There's also Tom Selleck plays the person that I can't help but think about Robert De Niro in Meet the Parents. He's the in-laws who is getting to know this new young man. So it's got some great comedic moments, and it's not a movie that makes you think, but it is fun.
Oh, I don't have to think. I want to watch it again right now. A film that, wow, this does make you think. That's really almost the polar opposite. Is a film called Jack Goes Boating. And this is a relationship film. As I was watching it, I wasn't sure, do I like this, do I not like this? It actually, it's kind of a slow, gentle film. It has a nice message. Parts of it actually kind of reminded me of Magnolia for one reason or another, which is one of my favorite films. It's a little dark because it's about real people's lives. They're not glamorous, they're not beautiful, but they can love people, and that's what life is all about, right?
You mentioned the actor. What's the name of that actor? He's a very good actor.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Okay. Yeah, and he received an Academy Award for Capote, and anyway, he plays the main character in this film, so it's, you know that it's
He
well
also
acted.
directed it.
Oh, he directed it also?
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of interesting, although not tremendously fun. A movie that was just pure fun. And I don't want to give the impression that it was extremely entertaining, but because it's not terribly easy to follow. There's some language issues there. Not bad language, just difficult for people at least our age to understand. Because it's set in Jamaica, and they, Irie Man, which is about as much of that language as I know. It's really a form of English, so you can understand if you listen very closely. But it's called Countryman, and I understand it is something of a cult film.
That's what one of the reviews that I read said that it is, and you do get a behind-the-scenes look at Jamaica. The main character named Countryman plays himself, so apparently this guy does have a lifestyle similar to what is portrayed in the film, where he is just a simple fisherman and lives by what he eats, and finds the pick on the land, and smokes pot, and somehow has enough money to bribe the guards to see his friend in jail. So it's an interesting film just from a lifestyle perspective, and there's also this concept of just befriending and helping people that he does in spite of the political movements to try to use the situation to maneuver certain people into political power. You have this innocent character who also happens to be just marvelous at kung fu and be able to jump and whirl around in the air. So it's a movie that you can have on in the background and not have to pay full attention to it, but just enjoy it and just get a view of life from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, it's from the 80s, and you kind of get the feeling that a Bob Marley fan went to see Jamaica and said, "Hey, wouldn't this make a great movie?"
Yeah, the music is great. Yeah, I don't want to forget to mention that. It's more Bob Marley music all the way through. It's really enjoyable stuff. And I'm not a huge Bob Marley fan, but I do appreciate him as a liberty and freedom person and very, very gifted musician.
There's some political twist in the film. To be honest, I didn't quite understand it. Wasn't sure if it was actual or if it was just being treated that way by the police. But Anyway. So I think that just about wraps it up for us for this week, since we, as we said, it was a busy week for videos that you probably either want to watch or have watched with the Bilderberg meeting going on. So do you have anything to add?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Be free.
Be free and have a good week. Thanks.